And welcome back to Knifeism. I'm Ryan.
I'm Drew. We're not dead yet.
Yet.
We're just...
We are still, however, hack frauds because
Yes,
with the 10th anniversary of the Dark Knight and the fact that the other recording we were going to do didn't work out all that well, I looked over and saw Drew's Batman shirt, and we've decided to talk about the 10th anniversary of the Dark Knight.
Yes. This movie...
Can I start?
Sure.
It was... Only Logan has come close. The end.
See, that's a whole can of worms because was that movie a Pandora's box of, oh crap, this is what a comic book movie could be, to where everyone thinks that it should be? Like, that's what all of them should be, and I disagree.
The difference is this is just about pre-MCU. I think that Iron Man came out earlier the same summer.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Iron Man came out, I believe, in May.
And then this would have been, July.
But I remember seeing, but I mean, this was a sequel to a movie that was well received, but not financially super successful in Batman Begins.
But well enough that it got a sequel. A sequel several years later. Yeah. And I think that's what I wanted to lead off on, is there was an interview. We might have even talked about this on the show before, but there's an interview with Nolan where he talked about how in the pre-MCU era, you got to make a movie. That's what he did with Batman Begins. Mm-hmm. Then he got to take a step back, look at things, take time, develop a script, and make the movie that he wanted to make.
Yeah, it wasn't touchstoned where, oh, we need you to get to this by the end of the first picture of what we're anticipating to be 3 or 5 or 10 or whatever.
Because the Joker tease at the end of Batman Begins is, it's very much, if that movie had bombed and all that you ended up getting was a teaser about the Joker, and they never ended up making that movie, if it was a standalone, great. You're hinting at the fact that Batman is now going out and becoming the Batman that we know by just showing that the Joker's around. And that would have worked.
Yeah.
But as it did actually lead into another movie that he got to spend, 3 years on total between the movies? Back when trilogies were trilogies.
Back when there wasn't the immediate turnaround or just shuffling of directors or writers in terms of like, hey, this is the second in a series, but it's not the Schumacher-esque, hey, he just takes over when Burton leaves, and then is this in the same continuity? Is this an entirely different thing? Because there's just tonal differences in those movies. But
and then for another solid year after that, he wasn't even sure he was going to do a third. Especially with Heath Ledger dying.
Shouldn't have done a third.
I disagree. Are we going to debate that, or are we going to talk about The Dark Knight?
Let's talk about The Dark Knight, and then if we want to, we can get into
all right.
Rises. I remember just that movie was one of those, it had a ton of hype which is weird because I don't remember anybody ever really talking about Batman Begins. Ever.
I saw it in theaters.
I did too.
I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was an interesting, neat, grounded take on Batman that still kept some of the comic booky elements in. I can't even.
The core elements of probably the most, the most easily groundable, super famous superhero is probably Batman. He's just a guy who dresses up like a weirdo and does like super cop stuff, basically.
Yeah, and then, okay, you're the comic book guy. The villain from Batman Begins is pronounced how?
I always said it as Ra's al Ghul because that's how it's said in Batman the Animated Series, which, if you are a learned man, is the be-all and end-all of Batman continuities. I rest my case.
I'm not going to disagree with you. For better or worse, it gave us Harley Quinn.
You'd have to ask, probably, I don't know, Denny O'Neil or whoever. I think Denny O'Neil might have created Ra's al Ghul in the 70s. Yeah, he was originally just an eco-terrorist character. Like, he was basically just militant Greenpeace, originally.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But the Lazarus pits and everything, it's...
all the cool, occult stuff, but, they didn't really... They incorporated that in a fun way in the Nolan verse, which is very grounded in reality for the most part. The tech gets a bit weird, but, characters don't really have powers.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's... But going back to what you were saying, you were leading into something by saying that the original didn't have a lot of hype.
Yeah, which was weird because everybody was super into the build up for The Dark Knight, but I don't remember. Like, I remember not even like being hyped up for going to see Batman Begins. I remember just seeing it and being like
thinking, oh, that's neat.
Oh wow, that's great. Like,
yeah,
I like Batman. I'll go see a Batman movie. And I mean, this is back when I was like when we were probably still getting like a subscription to Entertainment Weekly and that, and I was like, oh cool, what's coming out this year and stuff like that. And I still don't remember having that hype for Batman Begins. Maybe because it was relative unknowns as far as like director and actor. I mean, Bale's been an actor for years. He was a child actor that became, well known probably for American Psycho later than it was released. I don't remember that being a movie where people were, oh, you got to go see American Psycho.
I think it was one of those instant cult movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Bale, that movie, Batman put Bale on the radar. Not stuff like, what was it, Empire of the Sun that he was in when he was a kid.
Reign of Fire.
Yeah, Reign of Fire, which is a great movie that we should talk about at some point.
All right, canceling the episode. I'm gonna go and watch Reign of Fire.
Who's the better insane American colonel character? Woody Harrelson in Planet of the Apes or Matthew McConaughey in Reign of Fire?
I've got to go McConaughey.
McConaughey's awesome. McConaughey. Reign of Fire is so good.
This is still
Reign of Fire is a great movie that should never get more content added to that universe. You get enough of the story and to accept the absurdity of it, and we're off the rails again, but I don't care. But
was that still I'm on Drugs, Aaron McConaughey?
Probably.
Like a lot of drugs. Wasn't that why he just didn't get a lot of work for a while?
Maybe.
I don't remember. Whatever. But back to speaking of acting. Yeah. Speaking of casting choices, everyone that was so upset that the Brokeback Mountain guy ended up getting cast as the Joker.
Yeah, and now it's hard to find people who don't think that there is no other Joker than the Heath Ledger Joker, which really makes me roll my eyes because while I like the character, the Joker is a character that there are many iterations of, depending on who's writing him, what your tone of your film is, what you're going for narratively.
And the only one that's wrong is Jared Leto.
Yes, that is correct.
That's not even a joke.
Hot Topic Joker is worst Joker.
So he's getting one. I'm actually curious to see what they do. I guess we're going to segue for a minute. Or
Joaquin
Phoenix. Yeah. I
haven't looked into any of this. Are they just completely abandoning this whole combined cinematic universe and just doing, we have these rights, we're just going to do a Batman movie or something?
I don't think they're willing to give up on the DCU quite yet.
They're just kind of trying to do the...
They also know that they have the rights to some characters, and they've got some directors and screenwriters that want to take a shot at these characters, and I'm okay with that.
Oh, yeah.
Just like I'd be okay with, even though you've got the Punisher, we've already had 3 if you count Lundgren.
Yeah.
Plus the Netflix version.
No, there's 4, because there's
there were 3 movies.
The Netflix version. There's Warzone. There's
the 3 movies.
The Thomas Jane version, which that script with a better setting and certain things would probably be the best Punisher movie. And then you have Lundgren.
Yeah, so 3 movies, 1 TV show.
Yeah, 4 different actors playing the character.
But so if Marvel decided they wanted to bring back the Marvel Knights series and take another shot at doing some standalone stuff that was tonally different from
it feels
everything in the MCU.
By nature. Hey, yeah, this is a character that is from our universe in their own story, basically.
But bringing that back around to Joaquin Phoenix, I think that he's an actor that has just enough creepiness. Jared Leto is, when you say Hot Topic, it's in more senses than just one.
His Joker came off exactly as I expected his Joker to, which was super tryhard. Like it was trying to be unsettling, and that broke that suspension of disbelief that you needed for that character. It was just too absurd.
I think he wanted to almost go for a crazier... I think his Joker is how Javier Bardem as Anton Chigurh could have come off in the hands of a wrong actor.
Yeah. Yeah, to a degree. I mean, that character is so much more stoic than, like, hey, we need a very, like, chaotic Joker.
But let's face it, the character of Anton Chigurh is super chaotic, to the point that he does the coin flip better than Two-Face.
Yes.
Which brings us back to The Dark Knight. See what I did there?
Segue. Segue for the win.
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk about The Dark Knight, considering that's what the whole idea of this episode was. Getting back to what I was trying to talk about, I worry that everybody holds that as the standard that all comic book movies should be held to, and it's not, because it's a matter of tone. That the Nolan Batman universe is trying to be as realistic with absurd characters as it possibly can, and it excels at that, I would say.
Yeah, you take away some of the supernatural elements. When I first saw Murphy playing Scarecrow,
yeah,
he's a crazy psychologist who took too much of a dose of his own medicine, and now he's kind of gone off the rails.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, sure, it's still fictional. There's nothing that I'm aware of that would actually do that to a human being, but I liked how grounded it felt.
Dentists don't abuse their patients. That's what I always came back to. Is I'm like, okay, how do we ground a former psychologist who wears a scarecrow costume and then basically like toxifies people? Dentists occasionally take advantage of their patients. If you have a criminal psychologist whose patients are literally between a rock and a hard place in terms of anybody believing what's going to happen to them, why wouldn't that be the guy who like breaks it, snaps, and just tries to experiment on like fear toxins and things like that?
And it took the whole supernatural thing out of it, which is,
I mean, there's pseudoscience in all those Batman movies, but
yes,
it's believable pseudoscience.
But The Dark Knight, because now we're talking about Batman Begins again. Yeah. I'm sorry. No, wait, was that Batman Begins?
That was Batman Begins. Batman Begins.
That's right.
Scarecrow,
okay. Yep.
Scarecrow working with the League of Shadows.
Yeah, but then he shows up again briefly in the second one.
At the very beginning.
Yes.
With the hockey pads. Which is a super cool element of that movie, is that like this is a universe that doesn't have these superheroes, and of course you're gonna have copycats who realize that like, hey, Batman like has given a voice to the voiceless in Gotham. Can we talk before I lose this train of thought? Can we talk about how the biggest detriment to The Dark Knight is that Gotham lost the feel of Gotham from Batman Begins? I loved Batman Begins Gotham. I do not like, hey, it's Chicago, we're not going to pretend it's anything else in the next two movies.
100%. I want to say
the elevated train, the Narrows being this weird, like, impoverished neighborhood right in the middle of everything was super interesting to me.
The one thing that the 1989 Batman has and will always have over any other Batman movie is the feel of that city. The feel of what year is it?
Neo-Gothic industrial, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What year is this? Everybody's wearing fedoras. Like, it's the 50s,
well, it's
clearly
because,
modern day.
Yeah, it's weird because all the police cars are, like, 80s era Crown Vics, and then everybody drives, like, 30s cars.
Yeah.
So it's very strange.
It reminds me a little bit of the animated series.
Yeah. Yeah, where the animated series was in this nondescript. Yeah, there's computers, but everything kind of sounds like it's a reel-to-reel computer.
Uh-huh. Which, again, that is sort of... That is my favorite feel for a Batman movie. And it did... I guess if you wanted to try to ground it a little more, I can understand it. But I think it takes away from the movie.
I think the laziest thing that The Dark Knight does is cut corners with the pseudoscience so that he doesn't have to actually be a detective. Like stuff like the bullet mapping with the thing in the Batcave.
Oh, yeah.
Like just we need to get to where we need to go. So magic MacGuffin that fixes that solves the problem.
And it is a longer movie.
It's a totally manageable movie though. Like it's hard. Like I don't see any point in that when you decide, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch The Dark Knight, where you feel you need to take a break. Really,
it reminds me of Blade Runner 2049 versus the original. It just, even though the lengths are similar, one feels it much quicker.
Yeah. The way they. Let's just talk about the Joker then. Again, everybody was
going back. So I'm sorry. The length. There were a couple of plots that I thought maybe could have been shortened. That you could have increased that whole detective thing on. Like when he goes to Was it Hong Kong?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Wow. Yeah, that is that whole first chunk of the movie is the illegal extradition, basically.
Which everyone's talked about how that movie is supposed to be analogous to the Bush years and all this other stuff. And I can see how you'd make those conclusions, but just strictly speaking from a plot standpoint, the illegal extradition part probably could have been left out. And yeah, I would have rather seen Batman doing some of the detective work that you said was glossed over.
Yeah, that's the biggest Achilles heel of the Nolan movies.
But
They really cut back on the whole. He solves stuff with his mind. It's usually just there's a new magical computer thing that Lucius gives him that fixes everything super quick.
but we're nitpicking.
Yeah,
I'm confident in saying that this is one of the best movies of the 21st century.
that end monologue is probably the best thing in any like Batman related thing out. Nearly, granted, I haven't read every Batman story, so I could be wrong, but in terms of stuff that the general audience is going to see, that end monologue that Jim Gordon gives is probably the most chilling, like, awesome thing ever.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to nitpick subplot wise, you get a little shortchanged with the Harvey Dent plot because he just immediately flips the switch, which I guess times a grief. But
Sure.
I mean, you only get a little bit of you get very little show don't tell with him, because all you really get is, oh yeah, like Harvey Two-Face, like everybody hated him in Internal Affairs because he was just like ruthless with that.
And now Rachel's dead and he's burned and he just totally snaps. It's probably the most comic book-y part of the whole
but
thing.
I would argue that it's still second only to the animated series version of the character in terms of best version of Two-Face.
You didn't like Tommy Lee Jones?
No. With his two girlfriends and his dual house and everything.
And that stupid purple suit?
Yeah, it was purple and black zebra striped, and then it was white and black
God.
pinstripe. Yeah.
Well, pardon me for a moment while I jump out my fucking window thinking about that.
But yeah. I mean, like there are different versions of him. The comic book version could be really good, but it could be really bad when written by certain people. But the Dark Knight version of him has kind of become like the standard, to where he's not a dual personality necessarily. It's just kind of the dual natures of what he wants to do in his head versus like rule of reason versus like might, basically.
Plus the reminder of who he was versus who he is now.
Yeah. And in the animated series, he is the classic, like, he's got like an internal different personality, like he is schizoid to a degree, and it works excellently there. The two-parter that introduces that version of him is super good.
But I'm also not sure that I would have wanted to see that version.
No. Again, trying to take something that's a little bit more realistic and doesn't make light of a not really well understood by most people mental disability is probably the better way to go. Just have him snap. It works better that way.
So how do you classify this movie? I ask that because I just picked up I think they called it the definitive Blu-ray of Heat.
Yeah.
For $6, by the way.
One of the best movies
Yeah.
ever made.
So as soon as that Blu-ray shows up tomorrow, that's going in my player and I'm watching that. We're not the first people to say this, that there are obvious similarities between Heat and The Dark Knight.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm bringing it up just for the sake of making the comparison to a crime movie.
It's not, though.
But
The Dark Knight's not really a crime movie. Crime is kind of there, but it's very bare bones.
So how do we classify The Dark Knight?
It's still a comic book movie. It's just a much more realistic version of it, I would say. I mean, you go off the rails more, and of the three, it's the most grounded in realism. Even with the Joker there. Like, that's the kind of thing that, like, somebody with a lot of time and a lot of creativity and a lot of money could do if they really wanted to. Whereas, whereas turning all of the city's water supply into a gas that you already littered with a toxin is absurd.
Unless you live in Flint, Michigan.
And taking over American territory and being able to maintain control of it doesn't really fly with me.
Is it... You're talking about the third one?
Yeah.
Is that the closest we'll ever get to Escape from New York, being grounded?
Yeah, probably. Probably. But, no, the Dark Knight, I wouldn't put it as a crime because it's just a backdrop to, hey, we need organized criminal men in suits to be a way for the Joker to get the money to do what he does. And, oh, what do you know? The crazy schizoid-looking guy doesn't do what you expect him to do. What do you think?
Let's backtrack to the cartoon for a second, because I'm going to say that Rupert Thorne.
Yes.
Probably the best. Well, outside of Mark Hamill playing the Joker,
best character in the animated series,
because it gave it a certain grounded film noir 30s feel. Him just going after a mob boss.
There's a lot of just almost white collar criminals in the animated series, which is pretty interesting. Like there's Rupert Thorne, who's like everybody knows he's dirty, but nobody can pin anything on him. And then there's like shyster guys like Roland Daggett,
yeah,
that are in there too, that are like tied to Thorne's empire and all that.
I mean, there was an entire episode that was just about blowing up old houses and rundown tenements for real estate.
And this is stuff that we watch as kids, and they won't even show guns on kid TV anymore. Like, there's a degree of that. Like, kids won't understand how these things are bad if they don't see them being bad. It's okay to show that these things exist and they're not good. Maybe we just grew up in the right era, but I think that's something anybody.
I guess we did.
When you hit your 30s, you always start to think, man, we had it so much better than everybody else. But we had like the golden age of like animation, really.
Yeah, we did, absolutely.
Yeah.
Us damn millennials maybe have the outlook that we do because we grew up with Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah. It was a big rock.
Yeah. Us older, early 30s millennials. Yeah. But I say early as I hit my mid, but
yeah, whatever. We're close. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the Dark Knight that's taken from that takes the best, most realistic aspects of the animated series and just is like, well, this has a pretty good framework, and there's enough of this stuff in the comics that we could just shelf all the absurd stuff and try to make this as grounded as possible.
And that's why I have such trouble classifying it. I know you're trying to say that it's still a comic book movie, but name another comic book movie that you would put close to it.
It's got kind of its own circle. It really does.
Yeah.
It's just those three movies. Because anytime anybody tries to have a realistic, gritty comic movie, it usually fails because of tone, or it's boring, or they try to adapt some aspect that's a bit supernatural or goofy that just totally destroys what that movie's trying to go for.
And as good as it was, Logan was still a comic book movie.
Oh, yes. It's probably the closest thing in terms of what the Nolan trilogy did as far as subverting what you expected in terms of what a comic book movie is. The only difference is Logan has the support of years of people seeing that character to where you don't really have to build that up. Whereas, hey, we're going to do another Batman origin, but this time we're going to do it in, like, a believable fashion. Or at least as believable as, like, a billionaire being able to disappear in the internet age is.
So how much of the current formula do we have to blame on Nolan? Of just how movies are being made?
I don't know. Because, there are people who don't like his work. Because there is formulaic aspects of the stuff he does, but I don't know. Aesthetically and plot-wise, he does a good job of tying whatever he does together. Yeah, you're getting a Nolan film anytime you see something he's done, like Interstellar or Dunkirk. Like, there's still a Nolan feel regardless of what the setting and what the story is.
The swelling violin heavy soundtracks, yeah.
Yeah, like, just getting back to it, like, it was weird that I remember people being super hyped for The Dark Knight, but, like, hey, did you see Batman Begins? Oh, yeah, I saw it, like, I rented it. And it's just like, then why are you so hyped for this movie when you, like, through word of mouth saw the first movie.
Maybe because they were fans of A Knight's Tale.
It's not a terrible bad. It's not a terrible bad movie. It's a bad movie, but it's not terrible.
That's actually where I knew Heath Ledger from before that.
That and stuff like, what is it? He was just in like teeny movies for the longest time.
And God, this is gonna sound so weird and pretentious, but the crowd that I walked out of that theater with was different than the crowd that walked in. I saw this at the Galleria, and the crowd that walked in was any movie-going crowd.
Mm-hmm.
When we got out of that movie at about midnight, there were people that were trying to climb pillars in the parking lot and were just running around like madmen, sliding on the railing of the escalators. I've been to a lot of movies, and I've never seen a crowd walk out of a movie
like,
that
affected.
And God, this sounds so
no,
pretentious.
you know what? I kind of feel like the same thing happened after Blade Runner, and it wasn't. Oh yeah, because everybody was sleepwalking, but it was just like quiet and reserved and like
respectful,
contemplative. Yeah.
Yeah, movies have an effect on people, even if you don't know it, and the fact that people were acting like assholes walking out of The Dark Knight, and it's not like anyone was talking in the theater or cheering or being obnoxious.
Yeah.
It was the feeling when they left the movie. And you gotta give, I guess, credit to Ledger for that.
Yeah.
But I hate that every conversation about this movie has to focus so much on...
Yeah, you and I have joked that he got the Sorry You Died Oscar because he, like, looking back at that year, he really didn't deserve it, even though it was a really good performance. There were other really good performances that year that probably should have beat him out if he weren't dead.
What else came out that year?
I'd have to look back, but I know you and I have done this a couple of times before and looked back and been like, holy crap, he really did just get the posthumous Sorry You Died Oscar. But
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, so but I don't. What I hate is the and this is the nerd in me, the casual response to, oh yeah, like that's the Joker, that's how he always should be, and it's like, no, that's a character that has many faces, not necessarily that he's been a different person every time he shows up in any iteration he shows up as, like comic book wise or show wise. It's just he's a malleable character that his psychosis adapts to whatever story whoever's trying to tells. Like there was an arc where he cut off his own face and wore it as a mask, and that was like very like lame.
Well, is there a comic that is closest to The Dark Knight?
Closest to The Dark Knight? I don't know. I mean, like if you were to read some of the, I mean, maybe the closest is probably Moore and Gibbons' Killing Joke, in terms of, yeah, it's still a Joker, but like sadistic Joker. Like the whole, do you know the Killing Joke plot?
Oh yes, where
he just wants to show that anybody can be driven crazy. Yeah, like that's probably the closest. That's probably the most tonally close adaptation of the character that was used for this movie. Is you just want somebody who wants to show people being like his whole point is just to show that everybody can have a bad day, basically.
Well, we're closing in on half an hour. There's still some stuff I wanted to talk about, though, so I'm thinking we call it here, make this a two-parter?
Sure.
Awesome. So we're going to do a second part to this. That'll be up in a little while. Touch on a couple things we didn't quite get to here, plus maybe actually get into the sequels and hopefully do some stuff that hasn't already been done 100 times in the articles that have come out over the last week about the 10th anniversary.
At this point. It's us being derivative.
Excellent. We'll be back for part 2 shortly.